Well, good morning, good evening, Shubhankar. Great to have you with us on this conversation with Entomo about enterprises of tomorrow. We've been doing this series, and I was very excited when I heard that you are now in the same city as me in Singapore a few months ago, and gave me an opportunity to reconnect and reach out and have you join us. Welcome.
Thank you, Prithvi. It's my pleasure. Pleasure not only to talk to you also, but pleasure to again reconnect with you after perhaps more than a year.
Yes, and what a year it's been. Uh, so let me just do a quick introduction for about Shubhankar for our viewers. Shubhankar has been passionate about building organizations, especially preparing HR teams and leadership teams, and to actually deal with the future of work that we are starting to see sort of now becoming the norm for in many organizations. Having come from a consulting background in PwC as well as IBM, I think he's worked across clients and industries and geographies. And after a stint at Nokia, he essentially built what has come to be the analytics practice in Lenovo. And now today leads the HR function for Asia Pacific. So I think the vantage point, Shubhankar, that you bring into this conversation will be very valuable. So our purpose really is to really understand what our organizations doing about purpose. Over the last year, and as I said, it's been quite the so much has happened in the last 12 months or so. One of the things that has been quite fascinating to us as we have looked at research and our own experience with customers has been that productivity and performance continues to be maintained, if not actually in many stories we hear is actually higher than it used to be earlier. And I think while work has always been a little distributed, it has become even more so now because instead of just offshoring to a particular center in the Philippines or in India or in another country, we are now talking people working from all sorts of places. What has been, if in your experience and especially at Lenovo, what has been the unifying message or the unifying purpose that you have found has enabled you to continue to perform at the sort of levels that, especially in the technology industry, that Lenovo has demonstrated and others are sort of also showing? What is the messages? What are the experience you've had with leaders in Lenovo? To what is that purpose that has actually galvanized them and kept them energized?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, and Prithvi, thanks for asking me. So the purpose is what defines any strategy of an organization, and for us, it's a very simple that we want to be a leading technology solution provider for the world. And when we have this purpose defined, it also means that we have embarked upon what is called a services and solution led transformation internally. And let me explain that to you. We used to be for many years a pure devices organization. So we expanded. Portfolio. Lenovo brand is a well-known brand because we are the number one personal computer manufacturer in the world. And over a period of time, we also acquired our business in servers and then also mobile phones. However, we realized that the strength of our organization would be a lot more amplified if we are able to solve customers' problem and give them a wide range of technology solutions for what they need to make their businesses successful. So, with that mission in mind, 3 years ago, we set up a goal that we will start transitioning from being a pure devices company to be a services and solution organization. And with that in mind, we have been very successful over the last 2 years to move the needle successfully to transform ourselves to selling more and more services and solutions. Now, what's been fascinating is that the pandemic unfortunately has hurt everyone across the world, but it has also amplified the need for automation, digitization, virtual work, more gadgets and devices, and all these has got accelerated demand for the industry that we are working. And here is what comes the value of the organization, which is all about being entrepreneur, which is about being collaborative, which is about being innovative, and which is about being customer centricity. These are the four values. And it so beautifully ties in that each of these four values came into full focus and play as we looked at new spaces, new opportunities, new customer segments to go out and find innovative solution for the customer, which was never a blueprint for us in the future during the pandemic. So we rallied around finding out what customers need and tried to offer a complete solution, technology solution for large, medium, and small scale industry and for our consumer segment. And that's been one of the clear hallmarks. Your second point was on productivity. Very interestingly, Lenovo has always been a very, very diverse and distributed workforce. We have had no punching system for many, many years. We have allowed employees to have complete ownership and accountability and measurement on what they contribute to rather than how much of time they have spent in the office. We work from cafes, from airports, from lounges, from everywhere. So for us, it has been a very smooth transition as the pandemic hit us because we were quite equipped of working remotely, both on terms of infrastructure, in terms of culture, in terms of managers' support and mindset, and also in terms of measurement. So it's been interestingly, a very, very smooth transition for us. However, of course, employees demand to meet each other more socially. They want to, form associations, which is what they are missing out because as a company, we have also been a fun-loving social organization, and the need to be a social human being is something that is becoming a lot more pronounced as we have seen in the last 1.5 years. So that's how I would summarize ourselves that our strategy has been well further accentuated by the purpose of self-solving customers' problem by offering technology solutions for them, driven by a much higher demand and productivity, and at the same time being a seamless integration to work remotely.
Well, that's interesting that, even with all the external challenges that we've all dealt with and seen, the organization has sort of actually possibly strengthened and accelerated its transition and its own transformation into a services and product company that you were talking about. From what I gathered from what you said and from what I'm aware, uh, the values seem to have been the bedrock of actually what has helped in keeping people alive and focused on what the strategy of the company has been and the making that transition and transformation happen. is there
Very,
anything is there
sorry, go
anything
ahead.
specific that you in Asia or Lenovo globally did during the last, say, 12, 18 months, especially with your business strategy change, as well as your external environmental change to actually reinforce these values at this time? Was there any sort of focus on that, or was that something that was already sort of strong inside and it sort of actually paid dividend for you in the last 18 months or so with all that's been going on inside Lenovo and outside in the market?
Yeah, there are a couple of examples I can share, and I would like to break it up into number of things that I think has been focused for us. To start with, one of my focus has been as a company to lead this transformation, and COVID has actually helped in many ways to lead and help to transform much faster. If I look at some of the technology budgets across the world, the technology budgets have actually moved forward. What companies were planning to spend in the next 5 years have got advanced. Simple case like Overnight, when employees have been asked to work remotely, how does an organization, let's say a customer of ours, give so many laptops to their employees to work remotely? How do we offer remote security patches? How do we image those machines? How do we ensure that there is a remote support? Now, all these are services that we offer and provide. And there are many spaces where we haven't been specifically very focused, and we created new products and solutions as as agile as possible to bring those service offerings to the market. So what did we do as people organization? So I call the four C's as we want to do the transformation. The first C that I shared with the organization is all about capability transformation. The second one is about capacity. The third is compensation. And the fourth one is culture. Let me share a little more about the four C's. So when you look at capability in an organization, being a company that made and sold devices for so many years, how do you transform capability from selling some things for the last one decade to suddenly selling services and solutions, which needs a very different kind of mindset, which needs a different kind of skill and attitude. The second is about how do you create capacity. Here we are talking about having more resources on the services and solution side of the business and trying to align the organization based on where our strategic goals are. And this also includes processes and business management systems. That's the capacity. The third is around compensation. How do you realign our goals to compensation that helps the both the front end organization and the back end organization to sell more services and solution, keeping and ensuring that our devices portfolio continues to be a market leader without dropping that because that continues to be our bread and butter. And lastly, is about culture. How do you shift the culture of recognition and rewards to ensure that we are communicating a lot about our journey on this transformation? So these four C's, as we call it, which is around capability, capacity, compensation, and culture. Beyond this, what I would like to also share is one of our biggest focus during COVID, which many organizations have also done, is significantly stepping up on well-being, which is a separate topic by itself. We have been quite a remote organization, but it is also something that we had to step up significantly. And we have done many, many things in the well-being, and we continue to that, which I can talk a lot more about. But I would put that in a very, very special space because that's really something very close to our heart.
And that could be your fifth C, which is care.
Oh, it's scare. Okay. I love that. I will add that to it, Prithvi.
So let me, move a little bit to the conversation around your previous assignment at Lenovo. You set up the analytics function from scratch. You hired people. You looked at the technology. I remember about 4 years ago when I was setting up, a practice. I was having a coffee with you to sort of hear a little bit about how that journey has been, and it was very valuable. And uh, as you built this analytics practice and service that you provide through HR for your leaders, and you marry that or you sort of mirror that into the conversation you had around capacity, compensation, culture, and we will keep capability as a, discuss that at a little more length a little later. But at least the other three C's that we talked about, was there insight, information, data that leaders were looking for from you in that journey of setting up that analytics practice that really helped them make better people decisions as line managers? One of my pet um, uh, issues that I evangelize and advocate a lot is that the ownership of the employee experience is really around the line manager making good decisions around capacity, compensation, and culture that you talked about. It's not necessarily HR who is possibly delivering that experience. but given that you were building this analytics practice, what were some of the things that leaders were asking of you as you built that? What were they demanding of you to actually do a better job in managing people, managing talent at that time?
So one of our values, Prithvi, has been entrepreneurship, and that's so prevalent in Lenovo. I got a call from the chief HR officer one day and said, "I have." She was in a room with an external consultant, and she gave me a one-line brief, and she said, "I still remember the day that I just came out of a meeting on HR analytics. I'm fascinated how what role data can play." But I would like you to build up a HR analytics organization without consulting help. And that was a one-line brief. And from that point in time, I did a couple of things as I built up this function. I listened and heard about the best practices in and the world of HR analytics, both from consulting organizations and organizations who have been in this journey for 5 or more years. But one of the things I would like to address to your question is sometimes we get so caught up in what we have created that we lose sight of what our customer needs. And data without a particular purpose of why we are creating this analytics is meaningless. So I had my own unsuccessful lessons when I initially was very excited about what we could unearth. As an example, I identified the real cost of having a role not been hired for 6 months. And what is the real opportunity cost? The role cost of the sales, the cost of training, retraining, onboarding. And I thought I had created something which will be so exciting to present to different stakeholders. But guess what? I realized that there is fairly less appetite for people to really use that information. And there might be very valid reasons because there are many other priorities which people are chasing, and this is not what makes the most important priority for them. However, one of my learnings has been go back and find out what is the business problem that any business is trying to solve. And then go back and see how can HR help to solve that business problem. And that made me rethink the entire proposition around how and what choices I would like to make in building the analytics projects out of with the help of the team. One example being we are a highly sales driven company. And one of the things that I picked up as the first project is on sales analytics. How do I measure the effectiveness of sales analytics and ensure that we are able to not only look at the prescriptive side, but also the predictive side of sales compensation design and its impact on the business. That's one. Another example project I picked up was how do I bring a strong correlation between in a call center on leadership and manager capability versus net promoter score of the call center. I think these were really business projects which created a far more impact. And then I started relooking at my proposition that we have to give what the customer wants rather than trying to create analytic solution which makes us feel good about what we have created. So that is one of my very important learnings to in terms of what I did that time. Now talking about COVID, I was in a conversation with the senior vice president of Asia Pacific, and I was sharing with him multiple reports of different consulting companies, what's happening across the world, and how organizations are responding to the COVID crisis. And he came back and told me, these are all data from North America. These are all data from what's happening in other parts of the world or even Asia Pacific. Do you know what our own employees are going through? And that set me thinking, hey, I need to do something about it. So within 3 weeks, I launched a fairly comprehensive survey with 2,000 plus Asia Pacific employees. It started with measuring how physically fit they are, how mentally well they are, what kind of safety and health precautions they are taking right now, whether they would like to come back to the office, whether they are working more or working less a number of hours, whether they are able to eat a balanced diet in pre-COVID or after COVID, what's the family situation. And that was such an amazing insight because it was a rich, purposeful, actionable insight that helps us to craft what we really wanted to do during COVID times. And this was real time. This was the voice of the customer in the best possible way. So this is one of the example how we use data to drive decision making process and make changes.
No, that's great. Great to hear. I think lots of times I always say that our profession struggles with trying to tell the manager or tell the employee what we want to tell them, what we want them to hear, rather than putting our shoes in the or putting ourselves in the shoes of the receiver of that communication and thinking about what they want to hear, and then responding to that ask that they have. We've got into, a lot of us are talk about design thinking, etc., which is always about, putting yourself in the shoes of the persona and responding to that. So clearly, that that's reflected in, as you sort of got the right questions answered, rather than rushing to a solution. But let's first clearly spend time enough on the questions, because that will lead us down the right decisions. I think we tend to sometimes jump that step too quickly, which possibly is something we all need to take away. I'd like to go back to and the last question had, or last area I wanted to explore, was really around the comment you made about capability. As the work has changed, especially in Lenovo, in your current context, with becoming a services and a product company, as well as in the environment that has changed, our workplaces have shifted so much, and that must have reflected in some of the feedback that employees gave you in the surveys that you talked about that you did. The third area is really around the workforce and their aspirations of for growth, for learning, for career as journeys that they want to that they were on. All those, I'm sure, got a bit sort of shaken up or sort of changed as we sort of have, as your business evolved, your business strategies changed. Plus, you were dealing with the external environment changing. Now, of course, technology plays a big role. I'm sure at Lenovo, and in some of the things that you do. Maybe if we can focus in a little bit around how did you use technology, and knowing that that's a passionate area for you as well, in this whole space of capability, careers, to help people grow. Were there other initiatives or practices that you have sort of seen that have really been impactful, by applying tech or into how people can manage their capability and career growth?
One of my rewiring of this has been how can we look at each of the HR lifecycle processes with a digital first mentality. And I would start with onboarding. And I'm amazed how in the last 1 year we have onboarded thousands of people across the world. And I salute them because they haven't come to a physical office. They cannot meet their employees and colleagues and managers, which we are so used to. I've been in the organization long enough. So I keep asking my team members who've joined in the last 1 year, how does it feel to experience Lenovo culture when you have never set your foot in an office, when you have never had a social gathering together or work in a conference room at one go? So how can we think digital first in each of these processes? So let's start with onboarding. Then we go to, have a person integrated in the organization through an induction plan, which is again digital. We have moved the entire capability development. We call a skill transformation program called ASAP, which has been a flagship program now for the third year, accelerated solutions adaptability program. Now, we have completely moved from a face to face to an online version. And this is, when I talk about online, it's just not e learning, it is VILT, virtual instructor led training, blended learning. Everything that we do right now has got enough and more of polls, chats, because all about how do you keep a learner engaged throughout the learning process whenever it is a 1 hour or 1.5 hours. You keep constantly think about reinforcing two-way communication as if you need to be on an overdrive to ensure that you are capturing the mind share because there's so much of distraction happening. As you talk to me, I have got 15 different icons at the bottom of my screen. At any time, each of these can pop up. And it's so easy to be distracted. So how do you get a learner's attention for and captivate him or her for that period of time? We look at performance management. We are in a performance management season right now. The conversation has completely gone virtual. And how do you build trust when you're not in the same room together? People can break down. I had a situation when I was talking and giving feedback, somebody who wanted an outstanding rating. And this person perhaps did not get a rating, and performance manager is management is another discussion altogether. I realized that this person got very emotional. And you know what that person did? That person switched off the camera
Mm.
because there was tears in the person's eyes. Now, in a face-to-face meeting, one would give a pat on the shoulder and give a hug or try to help that person, say it's okay. A rating doesn't change your life. But today, a manager is so helpless that we have to build those skills to
Yeah,
understand those cues and look at those expressions,
yeah,
which is an art and a science to learn over a period of time. So, performance management. When we look at engagement, we do corporate social activities. Today, there is one as an example on environment. We have to make, cloth bags to shun away from plastic. So we are stepping up our employee volunteering as a great way to give back to the society. At the same time, it is also helps in bonding and people's engagement. So it is, how do you build engagement in a virtual world? We have Father's Day coming up on the 20th, and we have run a contest of your 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 picture with your child 20 years ago and now, as an example. So create a lot more online, Facebook like, Instagram like community building and people. When we look at rewards and recognition, we've got a reward portal which is completely digitized. So people are giving likes, people are putting up stories, and others are contributing to the stories. So we have to look at every HR life cycle process with a digital first mentality.
like that.
And that's been a sea change, both in the technology standpoint, from a process standpoint, and a capability standpoint.
No, I like that digital first. I've grown up, before I was in Intomo, I was in a company that used to talk about employee first, customer second. And, I think the world has shifted to digital first, putting people, giving people that experience. I think the ability to sort of reach them out is also great. So thank you so much. If I look at all your answers, I think one of the things that sort of strikes me is that clearly the approach has been extremely thoughtful about the implications of that. And we believe that in Entomo, one of our big pushes is for organizations to be much more considerate about what kind of goals are they giving people, how are they helping them using tech to actually perform in those goals by giving them the right skills so that those individuals grow in their careers. And that's the journey that we want companies to be much more thoughtful about. And many of the examples that you shared sort of reflected that you are anchoring in your current employer at Lenovo. So thank you for sharing. I'm sure it will be very valuable for our viewers, as well as I'm sure it'll be very valuable for us as we sort of reflect and see how we can uh, play a role in some of the kinds of initiatives that you do for our clients as well. So thank you so much, Shubhankar, for taking the time. I look forward to hopefully meeting in person as well. And we shall stay connected for sure. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Prithvi. I'm hoping that we will meet in person very soon. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.